Hey, welcome to Mike the Baptist. I'm glad you could join us again. It's always nice to see you. We can't see you, but you can see us, but it's still nice that you're there. If you are, if you're not, I guess you wouldn't know it anyway. But anyway, I'm Mike the Baptist. Mike the Baptist. And with me today on the Three Preacher series are three preacher friends of mine. I actually go to church with all three of them. Most of you know that, that are familiar with this program. Some of you may not, but now you do. Michael Koontz is a preacher at my church.
Hello, Jackson.
Nice to see you, Michael Koontz.
Likewise, good to see you.
Who, from the first moment we met, I pulled an Arkansas thing on you and just started calling you by your last name, and you started calling me by mine.
Absolutely.
So it's Koontz and Jackson.
That's right.
That's not just an Arkansas thing, I guess, but we did that a lot in Arkansas.
Yeah, used to it.
Either way, glad to have you back
Thanks.
here.
Glad to be appreciated.
Jason Ricciardi's across the table.
What's up?
Another preacher. And good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Jason has so much knowledge.
Mostly useless.
That's fine. I can remember my first girlfriend's phone number, but I don't remember to pay the water bill on time. So I don't.
Have you tried calling it lately?
No, I haven't. I
That'd
should
be
try
fun
that.
to try to see who it goes to.
Do you remember?
Let's do that on air right now.
Do you remember what her number was? Was it 867-5309?
It's 2358 448-2358.
Oh, now everybody's going to call you. You better edit that
So
out.
my grandparents' house where
What's
I
the
grew
area
up,
code?
their
Let's
phone
FaceTime
number,
her.
their phone number was 448-2115 in my house where I grew up. A guy opened a pizza joint in town, and he got the telephone numbers 448-2114. So when the phone rang at my folks' house, this was after I was grown and gone, but if I was there and the phone rang and I was sitting by it, I always answered it. Hello. If somebody was ordering a pizza, I took their order. And most of the time, I told them no different. I just took their order.
And they were starving, hangry, and they went to pick that pizza up,
You bet.
and they were ticked.
Yes, I did it more than once and had a great time
You
doing
probably
it.
made them close their business down eventually. They ticked off the whole town and had to shut up.
It was just so funny. Yep, they get that call once in a while. But anyway, glad you're here, Jason.
Yeah, good to be here.
See the kind of things Jason stirs up in your mind. It's just like when you just know you're going to talk to him, you just start everything. Starts.
Unleash the beast.
That's right. Brother Hodo, HD Jones.
Morning.
Nice to see you. 12:01 a.m. Saturday mornings, and you're
early.
right there. HD is a preacher. He's actually, I guess, he's one of the preachers at my church, but he had the job first. Is that how you say it? I don't.
It's been there a long time.
I don't know. You've been there a long time, but they're all three preacher
20
friends
years
of
now?
mine.
Is that right?
20 years. I used to joke.
No, it wasn't a joke. He had a bet going. He goes, about 6 or 7 years. We'll be
7
done.
years when we used to run preachers off,
Yeah.
the deacons would get together and say, he's getting a little big for his britches. It's time. So from about the 6 years, HD started looking across the room
Yeah, I
at
was like,
me
this is not good.
all the time, going like, it's coming, isn't it?
Do I need to get my resume together?
20 years. I'm glad you've been there.
Been
Pretty good guy. You make me feel so normal.
Which scares the crap out of me.
Well, yes, but I just want you to know how much I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Because before you came along, and even a long time after you first got there, I was the one that was just most insane. You have made me feel so normal. And I don't feel alone.
I'm glad to pull the bar on
So
that.
you're saying that our pastor is normalizing abnormal behavior.
Absolutely. I'm
right,
saying
there we go.
that.
Like the
I don't think
Pied
it's a secret. If you don't go to church with us, come see for yourself. It's, yes. Yep, something to see. But you're a good guy.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Send us an email, comments@mikethebaptist.com, and give us your opinion on any of us or yourself.
As long as it's good.
Yeah. We just want to hear from you. We want to email. I bark about it every week, and it's working now. People are sending things. I guess they're feeling a little guilty. I ran into a lady this week who said something about she keeps meaning to send it, and she always thinks about it. And I asked her, well, why don't you just send it? So I'm expecting one from them now, too.
Have you got anything from Denny lately?
Denny? No. I need to explain Denny again sometime, and I'll do that.
Is that a restaurant you ate at growing up?
No. Was Denny before your time?
Yes.
No, Denny's were there when I was growing up.
No, this is a different Denny.
It's a total different
A
Denny.
person.
Oh,
I'll go ahead and tell you real quick. www.mikethebaptist.com. I want you to visit the website, buy a coffee mug or a T-shirt. I don't know how else to say that. I used to be embarrassed about saying that, But I'm not anymore because I need to pay the light bill. So buy something, and a little bit of that will go to pay that. That's all that is. So also on the website, you can find all the previous episodes of Mike the Baptist. You can find links to YouTube channel to watch them and all the apps,
When you can't sleep at night, turn us on.
Turn us on. We'll help you. We'll put you in the mood. You can do some snoozing. Snooze away, folks. But anyway, yeah, so go visit the website and all that. So we'll move into the front porch visit shortly. But I'll tell you about Denny first real quick, because it is kind of an interesting story. So many, many years ago, my son and I were trapped at Target because his mother wanted to buy a greeting card, which is like death words to us, because we know it's going to take a long time, because she's going to look at all of them. She's going to bring most of them to us and ask us what we think, and we got to make up something to say every time. So we just knew we were in for a long. So while we were waiting on her to pick out this card, I got to look at these cards, and I came up with this little idea, and I told my son, we should buy 2 or 3 of these cards, just random, and just send them some people that we know from around our church, and just write odd things on them and sign somebody else's name, and then just never tell them what happened, and just see if they come back sometime and say something. So we did. I think we bought 3 cards that day. And like on one of them, it was a thank you thing. I think we put thanks for the table lamp. It came in handy at the perfect time. And we signed it Denny. And we picked out somebody from our church directory and mailed it to them. And another one, something about some money. Thanks for the money. One of them made a little mistake because we sent it to one of the man or woman at the house. And we realized later that what we put on it, if the other one read it, it was not going to go well. So we learned from that person. But
then one was very personal, like praying for your mom.
Oh, yeah.
She just had surgery.
Oh, yeah.
And so...
Yeah, we
need to complete this part of the story, because he's over here just having a big time. Meanwhile, people are coming to their Sunday school class going, have any of y'all gotten a card from this Denny person?
Well, let me throw one thing in here. That 3, later on we decided, well, that's fun. Let's do some more. I think we wound up with almost 200 that we mailed out before we were done.
Yeah. So there was this...
That's an expensive prank.
Well, it was fun, though. So much fun.
There's this Denny person that nobody knows that's talking very, very specifically about things that have been mentioned in Sunday school or going on and this is really before Facebook was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And
some of it was just random, though.
And so these people get to talking about it, then they start coming to my office going, who's this Denny person? Well, I'm starting to put pieces together, and I'm laughing. I'm like, I don't know, it's probably somebody praying. But I mean, there were a couple people like, wanted to call out the National Guard, see if we could get some fingerprints on these cards. Who is for, gosh, we got to have a security team meeting. It got pretty interesting.
Well, one of the fun ones after it really, because I did start hearing about it all over the church and around town after a while, but we decided not to say anything because it's so much fun just hearing it all. But I remember being at some church meeting, a bunch of people in there, and one of the people in there said, I know what this is, this Denny thing. And everybody says, why? They said, it's an acronym that the preacher's going to start preaching, like a sermon series.
That's right.
And I remember that meeting because I was going, yes, that's exactly what that is. But anyway, it was so much fun. I think Andy Nash, a friend of mine, might have been the one that actually busted me, because I remember being in line at a Thanksgiving dinner or something, and I think it was Andy said, you're Denny, aren't you? And then one by one, people started saying, you're Denny, aren't you? You're Denny, aren't you? But you know what? I never did say that I was Denny to anybody, and I'm not saying it now. Denny was just he's a guy that's still out there and still gets happy birthday wishes on Facebook to this day.
Yeah.
Denny was a strange family member, wasn't he?
Sorta, but I don't know whose family.
Right.
Yeah.
But whoever had him in their family, God bless him.
He's still alive.
I bet he is.
And, I look for someday he might come back. On the front porch today,
Speaking of strange relatives,
Yeah. Well, I get bored. I'm just saying. On the front porch today, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about strange relatives. Oh, wait a minute. That's why you said that. I'm a little slow. Thank you. Thank you so much. I got wrapped up.
It was a good transition, Michael.
It was. I got also wrapped up in my own story.
really, man.
I won't tell a strange relative story since I told that, because that is my strange relative story. But yeah, we're going to talk about strange relatives that we've had. Odd, bizarre. You know what I mean. You all have a strange relative. We all do. Koontz, let's start with you first. Do you have a strange relative that you can talk about?
Yeah, since she's dead, she can't come back and get me.
That's the best kind. Well, I mean, not the, you know what I'm saying.
It's safe.
Okay.
It's safe. So, as most good stories begin, begins in Alabama.
Of course.
Of course, for
That's what
strange
everybody
people.
says.
With a
Everybody
banjo
knows
on
that.
my knee.
With a banjo, yeah. It wasn't my relative named Bammer or Zomer. This was a relative, my Aunt Gladys. And Aunt Gladys was about as strange as you could get, crazy. And you'd walk into her house, and there's a movie coming out, or maybe it just came out, a Barbie movie. And if you see the previews for it, the houses are pink. When you walked into Aunt Gladys's house, everything was Pepto-Bismol pink. The walls,
Wow.
the carpet.
I wore the right shirt today.
Yes, you would have. Actually, you would have been
Disappeared.
camouflaged
I
in
would
there.
disappear
Yes,
in
you'd
Aunt
just be a
Gladys's.
floating head through her house right now. Pink everything. It was really crazy. She wouldn't let children come over, so she just did not like children. And then Aunt Gladys would plant flowers in her front yard, but they would be fake flowers. So she would plant plastic flowers.
Did she water them?
I didn't know they had seeds for
I didn't stay around that long. I don't know. So yeah,
Wait now.
yeah,
She would go out in the yard.
She would
and
go in the yard.
Make like flower beds.
yes, of fake flowers.
Wow.
Only in Alabama.
Huh?
Yeah. So Aunt Gladys,
That's interesting.
she is a strange one.
So you went there when you were a kid, I guess, with your family, or
I was able to see some pictures of the inside of the house because we couldn't go into the house.
Really?
Oh, she did not like children.
oh wow.
She did not like children, and thank goodness I didn't go in there.
So
but I
was she
saw
like-
the pictures of the inside.
She would meet you at the steps and make the kids not
Well,
come in.
Mom and Dad actually, we wouldn't get out of the car.
They were protected.
It was almost like a drive-by visit. We did not go to her house.
Yes.
She would come over to my other aunt's house and stuff, but you'd drive by, and yeah,
they would run up there and say hi and come
That's
back.
it.
That is bizarre.
Yeah, she was a unique one.
Uncle,
Never knew him.
maybe he couldn't come out of the house.
I think he died many years ago before her. So
Wow. So,
Yeah.
but she was by herself. As long
she was
as
a widow for many years.
Oh, I was thinking there was an uncle in there somewhere, and you just.
Well, there was an uncle there, but I don't think he could handle it very long. It was a tough situation.
Nice. Okay, that was a good story.
Hey, every once in a while I strike gold.
Very interesting. Was that your mom's?
Yeah, that's Mom's side, Alabama.
The way you said that, yeah, that was mom's side.
There's a lot of that on that side of the family, unfortunately.
I'm from Arkansas, so.
Yeah,
All right, good story. Jason?
Yeah, I've been racking my brain on what particular story
Yep,
to say,
to
but
pick one out.
I'll tell you about one of my grandmas, my great grandma actually. She was about 5 foot tall, maybe a little bit under 5 foot tall. She was just a little bit short of being legally a midget.
Wait, you can't use that term anymore. You got to use
Little person,
Little person.
whatever it is that they want to call themselves.
Right.
But
Vertically challenged.
You could not see her on the other side of an F-150. Like you could not see her over the hood on the other side of an F-150.
That's a good way to
And so
explain this.
every time that I would see her, I would get down on my knees and I would be eye level with her. Like, so you could chop off the bottom part of my body and I was the same height as her. And she just thought it was the funniest thing. She'd grab my face in her hands and just do this number and laugh and give me a hug and a kiss and everything. Because she's short, she had to go. We lived in Texas at the time, and she had to get like a legal document to have the airbag removed from the vehicle or disabled from the vehicle because she was so short that she had to sit close to the steering wheel. And if she had the airbag go off when she was sitting there, it would have actually done damage to her.
I don't mean to laugh, but
No, it's funny. It is. And she thought it was funny too. One time when my dad was growing up, he had some cousins that were kind of hellions, and he and his brother locked them in the garage all day and didn't let them out. And they were starting to get in trouble with his own parents. And she stepped in and said, "Nah, you let them go. They're good boys. Those other ones are bad boys." So she was that kind of person. She's kind of funny. But I'll end with this right here. At the end of her life, she was diabetic. And she's like older at this point in time. She's approaching 90, if not 90. And when she passed away, being diabetic, you're not supposed to have sugar. You're supposed to really limit that. When she passed away, there was candy under her bed, candy in her drawers, candy in her closet, candy under her bed. I mean, every single place she could possibly have it, there was candy. At that point in time, do what you want. But she was a character. She was all kinds of fun. She got divorced at one point in time, and she did not like her ex-husband, obviously, so she started making up stories about him. And we believed those stories for the longest time until I think my mom started doing some genealogical work on her family, and then she's like, that's not true at all. So that's just kind of the person she was. She was a lot of fun. She was all kinds of crazy, but it was the fun kind of crazy.
And her name was?
I always called her Great Grandma.
Great Grandma.
Yeah.
Aunt Gladys, Great Grandma. I think the names are important to keep up with.
Great Grandma Irwin. Yeah.
And the line, you couldn't see her on the other side of an F-150.
You could not.
I'm going to remember
that's
that.
That's a Texas saying.
That's
right
a
there,
country
ain't it?
song.
What?
That's a country song right there. You couldn't see her on the other
side of the F-150. It is, actually.
You should write that.
She was
I'll work
quirky.
on that.
She's all kinds of fun.
I would expect quirky from your family. I would expect quirky from any family here at the table, come to think of it. So we're expecting big things because as we move around the table, we've made our way to Brother Hodo. And I think we're all anxious to hear about bizarre relatives in your family.
Man, I have so many to choose from. That's the hard part. But my granddad was one of 17 kids. So his dad had 3 different wives. So you already have this idea of jealousy and hatred and
17.
How hard was it to name 17 different kids?
Right. So there's some really weird names. Like, of course, my grandfather's Hughley, which is where I get Hughley Doyle. And he had a Oma, had Gaither.
Huh. That's
Did they
interesting.
sing? Did Gaither sing?
No.
Oh.
So I want to tell you a little bit about Gaither
Different
because he was an interesting dude. So he was older than my granddad and kind of probably one of the more educated ones in the family. He
Well,
went
Gaither's a kind of classy.
Yeah.
It sounds like a classy name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you ever seen like old pictures of Walt Disney where, he's got his pants pulled up and always had that look to him, I mean, that's kind of what I remember about Gaither. And Gaither went off to Detroit to work at Ford and, make the big money. And so he comes back home and he's going to be in charge, and he takes all of the tools and stuff that were the family tools and puts them in his trunk. Well, my granddad, who probably weighed 120 pounds soaking wet, drives back to Gaither's house and puts his shotgun on the trunk of the car, and he says, "You can either open this trunk or I'll open it myself." So there was always this kind of contention
This was because of the tools.
yeah, and family property, we're all kind of there together. And so my granddad kind of trying to be nice to Gaither. When Gaither wanted to get electricity run back to his house, my granddad said, "Sure, I'll let you run across my best field." So we've got CMC poles right next to my house through our best field to get back to Gaither's house. Well, fast forward about 30 or so years, and my dad goes to build a house, and Dad wants to connect on where Gaither's pole stops. Gaither, absolutely not. You're not touching my electrical pole, blah, blah, blah. So Dad had to run his own electric line, and then Gaither's driveway, literally half of it was on my dad's property, in my dad's property line. So Dad went to his Uncle Gaither and said, let's just share this driveway. Absolutely not. You're not coming. If you come down my driveway, so Dad had to build his own driveway, go across the creek, spend a lot of money. So there was always this tension. Well, me being the young whippersnapper, I always really liked Uncle Gaither. I mean, he was just kind of a cool guy, and he was really good to me. He and his wife, they would buy us little presents at Christmas and stuff, and he always called me Whistle Britches.
Of course.
Right? That's
I
just
don't want to know why.
That's just a kind of, I know. I look back now and I'm like, did I have a problem?
Did you gas around?
I know. Did I have a problem? I don't know.
Were you lactose intolerant even
right.
then?
Too much milk.
Maybe
Natural gas issue.
But yeah, so Gaither was kind of like he was good to me, but he loved his brother and his uncle or his nephew, but there was just always this tension. I remember one day I pull in, I was driving, I pull in, I get out of my car, and here's my dad and Gaither, and they're just kind of going at it. And my dad looks at me and goes, "Get in the house." And I'm like, "No, I want to stand here. Get in the house." So apparently Dad had decided he wanted to tear out a fence row. Of course, the old fence row's got honeysuckle, and so you couldn't really see Gaither's driveway, and he liked it that way. But the fence row was on my dad's property. So Dad was just going to do it anyway. Well, I heard Gaither screaming out something about a bulldozer and beep, 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 beep. Oh, no. Some words, But yeah, he was just kind of one of those crusty old guys. But he was always good to me. Like, I remember early on, it's like he had an old Ford pickup truck, and he's like, "Do you know how to drive a 3-speed in the column?" I'm like, "Yes, sir." And I was probably 10 years old. I jumped in, I haven't a clue what I was doing. so yeah. I always had just weird family members and just that kind of stuff that happened. So
How did you get on his good side?
I really don't know, because there were some tense moments. So one time Gaither and his wife decided to go on a trip, and he called me. I was old enough, probably 10 to 12. He said, "Can you watch my bird dog?" Good little bird dog. I'm like, "Sure." So I'd ride my bicycle and go up there and feed his little bird dog and everything. 2 days before Gaither and his wife got home,
Oh, no.
my mom runs over the bird dog.
Saw it coming.
Oh my gosh, I felt so bad, So yeah, there's just families, aren't they?
Uncle
fun?
Gaither. How did Uncle Gaither handle that?
It wasn't good.
Not good.
It was not good.
Was the anger directed at you or your
No,
mom?
because I told on her quick. I was like, "You know how mom drives." I mean, and my mom really was. I mean, she'd run over chickens. She's hit a peacock, several deer. I mean, she stop in the community and just pay for things.
Where did the peacock come from?
The peacock came out in the middle of the road somewhere. I don't know. She just ran over it. I mean, it was a big. She's just not a good driver.
I'd like to see somebody run over a peacock. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
that would be exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very colorful
It
experience.
would be.
wouldn't it?
This
Yeah,
colored feathers.
Matter of fact, I think somebody did a skit about that, either at church or at work, and they played my mom, and they had all these feathers in their hair and stuff.
So it started out a little slow,
Yeah, I'm
Uncle
sorry.
Gaither, and then
Yeah.
by the end, though, we got
Yeah.
to your mom running over a peacock. So
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Mom redeemed.
Yeah.
Aunt Gladys. Granddad, Grandpa, what'd you call him?
Grandma
Great grandpa.
Great grandma.
Great Grandma. And then Uncle Gaither.
Gaither.
So interesting.
Was that a story about your Uncle Gaither or your mom?
Yeah. It just kind of all runs together.
That's what I was going to say. It's you can kind of see that when you start talking about your family. It's just kind of like a Cirque du Soleil. It's like a group.
Well, when you live on the family compound over there,
They do
weird
kind of
things
live on a
happen.
compound.
It's a little bit of a freak show. I'll give you that.
Yeah, we all have some of that, just so you know. Okay, that was exciting. I really liked it. Denny was my relative, I guess. That turned into my weird relative. I do have some interesting relatives, but future episode, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about Tom and Opal and some others. Anyway, okay, thanks. Good front porch visit. Always like that. Very revealing. I do hear comments, so you guys know that people like the front porch visit because they learn about the preachers. They hear things about the preachers that, aren't really preacher-like. And that's always interesting. They should be here between takes. They'll learn all
They should
kinds of
not be here between
We'll
takes.
learn all kinds of things, but no, they're fun. It's always fun. So we're going to take a break, come back, talk about some stuff we found in the Bible. Stay with us.
Barbie, you're beautiful. You make me feel my Barbie doll is really real. Barbie's small and so petite. Her clothes and figure look so neat. Her dancing outfit rings the bell. At parties she will cast a spell. Purses, hats, and gloves galore. And all the gadgets gals adore.
Barbie dressed for swim and fun is only $3. Her lovely fashions range from $1 to $5. Look for Barbie wherever dolls are sold.
Someday I'm gonna be exactly like you. Till then I know just what I'll do. Barbie, beautiful Barbie, I'll make believe that I am you.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
You ate it, Ralph.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
No, Ralph, I ate it.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
Take 2 Alka-Seltzer.
Alka-Seltzer neutralizes all the acid your stomach has churned out. For your upset stomach and headache, take Alka-Seltzer and feel better fast.
Did you drink your Alka-Seltzer?
The whole thing.
Hey, we're back. Sorry, I didn't mean to catch you off guard there, but everything's running smooth, so we're going to take advantage of it. We have technical issues sometimes. When you're doing video and audio and all that, you just have their machines. So you have glitches and issues, and I'm difficult when it comes to stuff like that because I like things to sound a certain way and look a certain way. We could set up one camera and never have these problems, but we're not going to do it that way. We want to give people their money's worth. They're not paying a dime for it, so
by golly,
they're going to get what they're paying for. You know, during this section of Mike the Baptist podcast program, whatever it is, we talk about the Bible. I like talking about the Bible. Some days I don't like it as much as others because it makes me feel bad about myself. But I have found in my time on the planet that feeling bad about myself sometimes makes me want to kind of change a little bit about myself. And I need some changes. I always need some changes. And the stuff in the Bible, you know, if you pay attention to it and you read it kind of with an open mind about yourself, it always delivers something to you that you can that you can use, whether you like it or not. So it's a good book. If you don't have one, get one. Everybody's got a bunch of them. They're laying around here. Y'all got them all over your place, and there's just good stuff in there. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I just like to talk about the Bible before we talk about it because it is such a fascinating.
Well, that's a good segue into our Bible discussion because you mentioned that there are things in there that you don't like because it causes you to need to change some things. And as we're reading the book of Revelation, chapters 2 and 3, there's these 7 churches, and these 7 churches, they have some good things about them, but then there's some negative things about them. And throughout history, different theologians have tried to say, okay, the 7 churches represent time. Others have said that the churches represent different phases of your Christian walk. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on a little bit because all of us, you know, once we came to know Christ in a personal way, are then on this journey. And there are days when you look at yourself and it's, hey, I'm doing pretty good. And then there's other days when you're like, oh, wait, I'm not doing as good as I thought I should. Or maybe even days that you're just doing really bad. So what would you guys share with our listening audience that haven't paid a dime for this? What would you share with them helps you stay on track to be better, because that's part of the goal is to be better than we were?
I would say throughout my life, and this is very clear throughout the Bible, who I hang around with. You know, growing up in high school, was able to hang around the youth group at church, and we did everything together. You know, hung out at each other's homes after church on Sundays and Wednesdays, and just did everything together. And it was a very good influence on one another. You know, get away from that and you start working out in the corporate world, and a lot of people that were not Christians, and you're having to spend an awful lot of time with them at work. And you can see it will start to influence how you act and words that you use and behaviors and things like that.
So my corruption is because of you and HD?
Probably.
Yes,
Probably.
Yes, indeed, it
That would
is.
be my observation.
Yes, thank you. But I would say, really, following that example that we have in God's Word, because Israelites would end up hanging around the wrong group and start acting just like them. So the biggest help for me is hanging out with people, just kind of like we get to do here, hanging around this table. And good or bad, I mean, we're having an influence on one another, and but it is good.
Mostly good.
It is.
I think it's mostly good.
And we're talking. I mean, we're talking about the Bible,
Right.
And I mean, this is very good for us,
Yeah.
and it really does help shape us and kind of helps keep us true.
I'll tell you what was the original question?
Like, what helps you do better in your Christian walk?
Yeah, I remembered what I was going to say about that. What helps me do better is remembering the times when I did get it right. And because every day is not like that. Every day's not like that. But the days when, when I go through the toughest things in my world is when I learn the most about myself and what the Bible's trying to tell me. That's when I learn the high points, where, you're super Christian for a while. I don't really learn much during those times, to be honest with you. But when the world really sits down on me and makes me feel like, this is just really, really terrible, that's when I learn the most about. That's when I get. So oddly enough, what keeps me going and wanting to be involved and encourages me are the times when I've had rough times. Because I know now, having been through that kind of stuff enough, that there's good going to come out of that if I will let it come out of it. It's going to come if I will let it come. So yeah, I guess somewhere in the Bible somebody talks about they look forward to the hard times, something like that. That's paraphrasing, hillbilly paraphrase, but
Consider it all great joy, my brothers, when you go through difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know why they say that.
Yeah.
Because you're going to come out the other side of that. If you let yourself, you're going to come out the other side of that with some new wisdom, which is going to help you. That's me.
So there's an analogy I'll use. I like to work out. It's a de-stressor for me. It helps me sleep better. I have more energy throughout the day. There's lots of benefits that go to going to the gym and exercising. So I don't always feel like going and exercising. 5:30 in the morning is early. And HT's probably laughing at me. He's like, you ain't never been there at 5:30. And you're not wrong. I'm oftentimes not there at 6. When I say I'm going to be there, it's usually like 6:15. I just don't feel like doing it sometimes. As much as I enjoy it, I don't always feel like doing it. But there's a benefit that comes from doing it, even when I don't feel like it. And it's sort of like that in my relationship with God. Uniquely, for the situation of the people here at the table, for 3 of us anyway, we're called to ministry. And it's just a fancy term where God's like, hey, I got something specific I want you to do with your life, and it's to share the gospel with others as a vocation, as a job. And so there are times where, you just get tired, you get burned out, you have too much on your plate to handle. And there are times where you just are brain dead and you don't feel like doing some of the components of your job. But because it is your job, you kind of have to do it. And so it's sort of like that in our relationship with God. There are times where you don't necessarily feel like doing it, but there's the benefit that comes from doing it. Even though you may not feel like reading your Bible, I'm a better person when I spend time in the Word. Even though I don't necessarily always feel like spending time in prayer, I'm a better person when I do. Even though there are times where I feel like maybe watching a show that I think is funny, but then as I get into watching it and I recognize that, man, there's some themes in here I really shouldn't be listening to, some language, some dialogue, some themes, stuff like that, and I shouldn't be watching it. Even though I may feel like continuing to watch it, I'm better off by listening to God and stepping away from those things. And so I don't know, for me, how do I keep myself on track? Sometimes there's an element of you just have to get over yourself and do it anyway. Either get over yourself and do the things that God has told you to do, or get over yourself and don't do the things that He said that's really not in your best interest.
That's why we talk about disciplines in Christianity. And those are we have to be disciplined in doing those things.
Yeah, and I know I shared this the other day, but the root word of discipline actually is the same root word for whip. Like, if you're going to get whipped, same root word as discipline. It's not always an enjoyable process.
Whip yourself into shape, right?
Yeah,
So
not
do you
always
do that?
enjoyable.
Do you do what you're talking about? You're talking about your discipline. Do you read your Bible every day? I'm putting you on the spot right there.
Yeah. That's what I said. Sometimes I don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a day-to-day thing, but it's the general direction of my life is headed towards, this is just who I am. I'm going to spend time reading
Yeah,
the Word.
you're heading
So
toward
it's-
that discipline.
Yeah. It is my goal to read from Genesis to Revelation every year.
Yep, I've heard you
And
say
I've
that before.
done that.
Makes me feel really like a heel every
Well,
time you say that.
That may not be the goal that God has placed on your life.
It is not.
For me, it is something that I have to teach on a continual basis.
Right, yeah.
And so I need to know the Bible deeply to be able to share deep things of Scripture with people.
Right.
And so it's something that God has laid on my heart to do. Now, you need to spend time in the Word. It may not be that you need to read Genesis to Revelation every year like I do, but do you spend time in the Word? Is that just generally speaking what you find yourself doing?
Right.
And the general direction of your life is often more important than any one specific moment.
I'd like to point out you need to stop reading the Apocrypha because you caused us to lose.
I did.
Last time on Inny or Outty.
That is correct.
And
Michael totally got me.
I'd
on that one.
also
Yes.
like to point out that Jason does like to go to the gym and hanging out with the wrong kind of people. See, before I came along, Jason would put 3 45-pound weights on each end. He's
Yes.
just bench press.
Yeah.
Now that I'm there, I'm like, give me 125 on each side. And Jason's like, okay, I'll do 150 reps with 25 pounds. So he's significantly shrinkle.
Right. He shrinkled.
Has happened because he's working out with me. But we talk about these things, but there is this reality, and I think Michael hit on it. We see it in the Israelites when they hung around the right people, did the right things, they were more happy. They were more blessed. You get away from those things, and that's true for the Christian. I mean, just because the Holy Spirit dwells in us, lives in us, with us, doesn't mean that we still don't have to discipline ourselves. And I would just add one of the things, and I'll take myself back 25 years before I got paid to go to church. Just being in the church with other believers was a big time influence in my life. And it always made me feel better. You could be having a bad day, a bad week, or in a bad way, maybe in rebellion, or just you're going through something. And there's that part of you that says, I need to get I need to get yard mowed. I need to, we need to hurry up and finish this so we can go on vacation. And it's real easy to cut out church. But I can almost tell you, every time I go to church, it makes me feel better about myself. It makes me enjoy this relationship more. Yeah, there's difficult days, there's hard times, but I don't know, something about being in the presence of other Christians and worshiping, even if you physically, there have been times when I physically could have stayed at home. I got a headache, I got a stomach ache, I don't feel good, I'm tired. But kind of if you push through that and you go on, then after that hour or two that you've been there, what you'll realize is, man, I feel a lot better than I did before I came. So, I think that helps me too, just being around the people in the church.
You said something, you used the word blessed, and it made me think of Psalm 1 and 2. It said, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. I mean, it's there right there in everything you just said.
Yep.
You're blessed if you, generally speaking, are walking away from the things God says don't do, because it's in your best interest to listen to him. It's in your best interest if you walk towards the things that he says, these are what you're supposed to be doing. It's always in your best interest to listen to God. It really is. So that's you're kind of getting around this idea of the personal aspect of how the different churches in Revelation 2 and 3 kind of relate to us on an individual level. But let's look at that kind of on a cultural level. In Revelation 2 and 3, there's this church called Pergamum, and there's some phrases in there. You're like, okay, I can see how that can actually relate to our culture today. It says that the Church of Pergamum was the phrase that was used is in the midst of Satan's throne. And so that Satan is our chief enemy, the God's chief enemy. And this church was in the middle of Satan's home turf. And one of the things that they found themselves doing is that they compromised in so many different ways. They held on to their faith, but there was a lot of compromise that goes on along with that. And so that got me to thinking, what are some of the things that we compromise on? And, there's the obvious big things that are mentioned a lot that are in our face all the time now in the news. But I think that those are in our face in the news in a big way now because we actually compromised on a lot of small things. Mm-hmm. And some of the small things that we've just kind of almost given up fighting, culturally speaking, is just simple stuff like we laugh and joke about a walk of shame. That gets glorified. And it gets played up that, hey, if you really want to live your healthiest, happiest life, you need to do these things. And they even make fun of the negative aspect of doing those things, like the walk of shame. How readily accepted that alcohol is such a part of our culture. Like, if you're going to have a good time and it's a Friday or Saturday, it has to include alcohol. If you're going to go to a friend's house, it has to include alcohol. Now, you'd be hard-pressed to make a 100% biblical case against any alcohol use, but I guarantee you that alcohol use in the way that our culture does it today is not positive. It's not the thing that God wants for us. Another one is cannabis use. There's so many quote-unquote beneficial aspects of it that we're told, but I bet that driving while under the influence of pot became a real issue for Colorado when they were the first state to legalize it. So why is it that we're only able to hold on imperfectly? And why is it so easy to give in to the culture around us, like Pergamum?
Well, sin is always easy. It's always the easy way out for us. And just like we were talking about a while ago, spiritual disciplines are hard work that we have to, if we take a day off, we're in danger because we'll take another day off and another day off. But with sin, it is so easy for us to do it, keep on doing it. It's what our flesh wants. And our culture is encouraging that, every walk of life. It doesn't matter. There is something out there in the culture that's going to encourage us just to keep on doing that instead.
It's all over your TV. I mean, you're constantly bombarded with something on your mind nowadays. If you get up in your house and you turn your TV on, your radio on, or your internet, I mean, you're constantly bombarded with something that's trying to get you
even
focused
before
on
we had the,
something else.
I used to talk about, before social media and the internet was our biggest influencer, just driving down the road and seeing billboards, and you might see something on a billboard that we really shouldn't focus on for too long, and it could lead to some bad thoughts and stuff. I mean, it's just and it's been like that for decades. Advertising and stuff everywhere.
What was the old radio program, War of the Worlds?
Yeah,
and how people freaked out that they really thought we had an alien invasion going on in the United States
because of the media.
Mm-hmm. And again, because I heard somebody say this the other day, and I was like, man, I like that phrase. We're born twice. As a Christian, we are born twice. We are physically born, and then we are spiritually born. And so now we live in this weird time where we know we're free from sin, but we're not free from the temptation of sin. And it's always chasing after us, and always, again, and it's hard for us. It's easy to fall back into patterns. And I agree with you, Jason. There's some of those things that are just the big headline things that we hit. But, one of the things that I've thought about recently too is just even good things influencing us in a negative way. For example, I love that, our church is invested in audiovisual equipment and lights and music systems and all that kind of stuff. But do we trust more in the ability to make somebody's voice sound a certain way and music to be certain loudness? Are we taking the world's concert series and bringing that into the church, going, we can cosmetically make you feel something. We can emphasize a noise and so make you feel something, and then we want to call that worship?
Yeah, artificial emotion.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that part of that I think is natural, because as your culture, I'm sure when a lot of the old hymns were written, they were written maybe similar to the sounds they were hearing at the time.
Yeah.
Some of them were actually written to bar tunes.
Bar tunes, yeah.
Exactly, and I think if I understand right, that's how the piano came into the church. So I get that a little bit, but I think, and what you're saying, I observe too that we have a tendency, maybe at times, to get a little overboard on production.
Well, and it's not
Where
a
we
bad
want to
thing.
entertain.
It's
No,
not a bad
it's
thing
not.
that we want to do our best and that we like. I always say rednecks. Have you ever noticed there are no yachts that are painted sparkly colors? It's only the bass boats that sparkle because rednecks we're drawn to sparkly lights and loud music and stuff and fireworks and all that stuff. And those aren't bad things. God created light, God created sound, God created and He gives us those things. But sometimes I wonder, are we artificially trying to get people to feel something as opposed to, did we really pray and ask God to show up in this service? Did we really prepare ourselves? Worship, I don't know about you guys, but I can walk into a worship service and get nothing out of it because I haven't done anything to prepare me the week before. And I think that's where we culturally get to. I want to have it my way. I want it instantaneous. I want to walk in and I want, I want Elvis to sing the song I want him to sing because it makes me feel a certain way. And I want it in an air-conditioned room and the lights and the sound. And we walk into church sometimes like that going, basically, God hit me with it.
Entertain me.
Entertain me.
Yeah, that's an ongoing conversation, I think, in churches everywhere, is that how much of what we're doing is entertaining.
Yep.
But you know what? I think I was talking to Neil, our music minister at our church, and he's got a music background. I've dabbled in that, and I remember talking to him different times about there's an aspect when you're a musician and you're a singer, there is an aspect of what you do that has to be entertaining, or otherwise nobody would want to sit in front of you and hear that.
Right.
So there is an aspect,
but it's a fine line.
It's a fine line. It's when your ego gets involved that messes it up.
You've got to reach your culture, and there's certain elements of the culture that you will implement, but don't let that dictate the message. Don't let it warp the message or anything like that. Right. It really is, and I think that's why it's been a source of contention in church for decades. Because some people think we're doing something wrong because we're starting to change with the culture. Well, things have been changing in church for 2,000 years.
Well, yeah. I've always put it like this. How interesting would it be to go to your church if all they were doing was blowing a ram's horn up there, all morning? It'd get pretty obnoxious probably. Cause,
one of the things that we grew up hearing about, tent revival. How many of us would go sit in a tent in 100-degree weather to listen to preaching and music played on acoustic guitar and do that consistently every week? We might nostalgia go once, but we're not going to support a ministry that's what they did every Sunday.
I've often wanted you guys that are in charge at my church to take all the chairs out of the sanctuary one Sunday morning and just put bales of hay in there and see how many people would stay for church. No, would just stay for church.
Yeah.
Please, I would really be curious to know how that would work.
So one of the things, or whatever, the culture is not always bad.
Whatever.
Culture's not always bad, so we can't beat up culture per se, but oftentimes what the culture feeds us is sin, and I find that sin is both invasive, pervasive, and progressive.
Wait, start over.
I find that sin is both invasive, pervasive, and progressive. And by that I mean sin is invasive, meaning once it gets in you, it's going to go into the deepest parts of who you are. It's pervasive. It's not going to stay in just one part. It's going to spread and grow, and it's progressive, meaning it's not going to just start out as something small and stay small. It's going to start small and get big and big and big, and you're going to find yourself doing more and more and even worsening sin in your life. And so it's sort of like this idea of a sponge. Whatever a sponge is what's going to be inside of the sponge. The flip side of that is, though, if you stick a full sponge full of water and you stick it in a Dr. Pepper, it's already got something in it. And it's not going to pick up that Dr. Pepper because it's already full. So I think one of the ways that we can, as fight against being filled with what the culture has, is make sure that we're filled with what Christ has. And so if we're already full of Christ, when the culture's pressing in on us and trying to both get in us, to get us to do worse, and to get us to be bad in every aspect of who we are, if we're filled with Christ, the influence of the culture is going to be so much more minimal. It's going to be easier to hold on to our faith.
I hear so many great analogies at this table. That's another one. That's a really good one.
It is. Although I was a little bit offended they used Dr. Pepper as sin, and I just started in my head going,
I do like me some Dr. Pepper.
I'm a pepper, you're a pepper. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too? But that is a great analogy. I'll give you that.
It was.
Yep. Yeah.
And such serious thoughts
I know,
pop
right?
up here.
I see when you say Dr. Pepper, what it makes me think of is Mr. Deeds.
I don't know what that is either.
Yeah.
It's an Adam Sandler movie. It's ridiculous, dumb
You
humor, whatever.
you can repent of that later.
Yeah.
So, culture, as we've talked about, it can mess everything up. It's a fine line that we have to be on. And Jackson, you kind of started us off on this segment. You stated that how the Bible can change us, how the Bible can direct us, and the same is true not only in our lives but in the life of our church, because we know the church is described as a living organism, a body of believers, and we have to be careful as a church in what we're doing collectively. When you get into the book of Revelation, it goes through several different churches and talks about them in different stages of what God thought about them, from good to bad. One church was so bad that God was very displeased and did not like at all what was going on at that church, and the church was considered a dead church. So a dead church is somebody that has completely lost what their mission is. They are not having that influence on the culture like what we're talking about that we should have. And I think in a previous episode we even talked about being the salt and the light. That's our job out in the community. Well, the church, we have to have this impact on the culture. And if we don't, well, we're going to become a dead church. So when you look at the book of Revelation, or maybe churches that you've known, maybe even been a part of through your life, how can you look alive but actually be dead? You ever seen a church that was like that? For me, my home church went right through that. They were an alive church. I've shared about Washington Avenue several times on this program. 1,000-member church back in the 60s, the 70s, led the SBC. But then in time, over the course of decades, they did not do what God wanted them to do. They would not adapt. They would not change what they needed to change to reach the community that grew in around the church, and instead shunned the community that grew in around the church. And the church died. It probably died while I was even a member there, and completely died years after I moved away from there. And it's a very sad thing to watch what was a thriving organism that had such an influence and an impact for the kingdom. But all that to ask, what do you see that a church could look alive, but in reality it's dead?
One of the things that I'm thinking of is bodies in the church does not equal believers in Christ.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not going to say what ministry is that I'm thinking of, but there's a ministry that I encounter frequently in our area that has lots of bodies that go along with this ministry. And it's not a church, so don't start going down the churches in our area. But there's a ministry that reaches lots of numbers of people. But I am not convinced that they're actually either discipling believers or making believers. And that I think is one of the ways that we need to be careful about measuring our aliveness just based on sheer numbers is not a good way of measuring it. Not to say that if you have lots of numbers in any religious setting that you're inherently doing something wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to be careful about measuring whether you are being effective and whether you are alive in the body of Christ based on sheer numbers. I think that's a dangerous way to measure. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely. I would recommend, not to take away from our podcast, but there's a great series called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. That church shot up and did some phenomenal things, and now they're dysfunction. I mean, they're out. They don't even exist anymore, and so it can happen to any of us. And I think the big thing is you've got to stay connected to why you're there, what God's calling us to be, because numbers don't always tell a true picture. I've also heard on the other end, I've heard pastors, every church I ever went to always went down in numbers, and that's because God's called me to fleece the sheep and get them down to the...
I think God's calling you to be a better preacher,
and
too.
You're just like, wow, do you ever look at yourself in the mirror and go, okay, we went from 100 to 50 to 25. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, or I need some help, or, so numbers can be outliers, but at the same time, I'll just say and y'all have heard my concern on this, with some of the success that Temple's had, able to build a building and do some cool things, my concern is we start trusting in our programs, we start trusting in our building, we start trusting in our methodologies. We know how to do VBS, we know how to do Sunday school, we know how...
Or the people leading those individual ministries.
To me,
they're not magics.
You've got to always go back to, it's got to be about God. Mm-hmm. When you take God out of the equation, just like Jason read in Psalm, it's blessed is the guy who's following God. And when we get away from trusting Him and we start trusting in ourselves, God will let you just go, okay, good luck.
Right.
I wonder if part of the equation too of when a church begins to shrinkle,
very good,
is the point where everything they do all of a sudden is focused on themselves internally, and they forget that part of the mission here is to bring more people in there to hear what this is all about. Because I'm just saying, I haven't read about Mars Hill, but I was just wondering why you're saying that. Did it explain why they went down? And I would suspect it had something to do with they got so focused on their programs and their music and their carpet and everything going on inside that they forgot, because the church is partly getting together and everybody kind of learning and working on themselves and growing that way. But I think an equal part, would it not be, or maybe even more a part, is trying to bring others, include them in that. And that to me would be probably one of the main reasons a church would crumble and just, I'm not sure God would bless a church that just got so internal that they,
Well, why would He? I mean, the church is here to bring glory to God. How do you bring glory to God? More people coming to know Jesus. If that's not happening, why would He bless the church? But I think a good way for us to end this on a positive note is to talk about a church that God said was alive. The church at Philadelphia was described as a living, alive, thriving, whatever you want to use, church. But I want to ask this question: what do you think the one thing would be to describe a church that is alive or that is thriving? What would be the one thing that you would mention of a church that is truly alive?
I think from a big perspective, the word humble, I think of the word humiliate too.
Same root.
It's humiliating. It really is humiliating that God doesn't need me, but God wants you. And I think when you stop and realize that, then when new people come into the church or you meet somebody who's going through a difficulty, you realize, okay, I'm not better than them. I'm in the same boat they were, but only by the grace of God have I learned this or been brought out of this or have come to a point where I have some wisdom about this. And just because they haven't doesn't mean that I'm better than they are. And I think that would be, to me, if you were to say what makes a church, I mean, there's a lot of pointers, like you'd say, people going into the ministry and spawning new churches and baptisms and all those things. And absolutely, but I still think it comes back to, do the people of the church realize that they're just sinners saved by grace who have a responsibility to reach out to other sinners, whether they're in the church or out of the church? When we start looking down our nose, I think we're in dangerous territory. Yeah.
We don't do this perfectly, but I love the way that our church has welcomed in the Men's Hope Center.
Absolutely.
There are some places, some churches I've been at over the years that would not have welcomed them in, would have turned their nose towards them. And I love the fact that we have welcomed them in, and not just welcome them in like you come, you sit over there, enjoy the service, that's all well and good, but welcome them in to the point, hey, come into our small groups. Hey, we would love for you guys to have your graduations here. Come bring your families. Welcome them to that point. I think that is indicative of what you just said. Our church doesn't perfectly, but it does recognize that we are all just messed up people trying to reach grow deeper in our relationship with God.
Yeah, and we're seeing those lives change for eternity. I think that's what it's all about. Yeah. And we've gotten to the point, it's like the Hope Center, they're not guests anymore. This is home for them.
And the ugly side of sin, we know that some of those guys are going to relapse. We know that some of those guys are going to walk away. We know that some of our people in our church, they put us at risk by being there. They absolutely do. And it scares us to death, but at the same time, you have to find a way to love people and yet protect this larger organization. I'll use an example of, if you've got somebody who's stolen money, I'm probably not going to put them on
You're not the
accounting committee or on the treasury, but they still deserve a right to experience grace, and so, yeah, you have to set boundaries and you have to think through things. But when you get to the place where you don't want to love people with their problems, then you miss what ministry is all about, I think.
Yeah.
And no person is broken beyond God's ability to repair them. Maybe beyond our ability, but no person is broken beyond God's ability.
That's a little churchy, but it's true. Just saying.
It kind of works, though.
It does. Well, no, it absolutely works. I just happened to notice it was a little churchy.
If you weren't fixing cameras, you could have buzzed him.
I could have buzzed him, but I was doing other technical things there.
I think that's kind of landed our plane, though, on this session.
It has. Not completely, though.
It's good.
Because what did you just say?
No person is broken beyond God's ability to repair them.
Well, you know what I'm going to ask you now.
Yeah.
So you just carry on.
Okay. Well, hey, if you're listening to this message and you're kind of wondering, maybe I'm so broken that God can't fix me. Well, let me let you know that here's the good news. You are broken beyond your ability to repair yourself, but there is somebody that can repair you in a way that you never will be able to. You, as the Bible tells us, you're already dead spiritually. Dead men cannot revive themselves. So if you don't know Jesus, you're dead. There's no amount of good deeds. There's no amount of good things that you can do. You can't give enough money to a church. You can't attend church enough. You can't be nice to that person that's mean to you in a meaningful way that will save you. But here's the good news. There is somebody who did something for you that you couldn't do for you. He lived a perfect life. There is somebody that took something from you that you deserve to have happen to you, and he died for you. There is somebody that's willing to offer to you a gift that you cannot buy. And he's willing to give his sinlessness to cover over your sinfulness. He's willing to give his life and replace your death with his life. And if it's real simple, all you need to do, if you don't know who Jesus is, all you need to do is man, say yes to him. That's really all that it is. Just say yes to Jesus. It's not even that you need to say no to everything. Don't worry about that right now. All you need to worry about right now in this moment, if you don't know Jesus, is to say yes to him. And I promise you, God will work on the other stuff on you later on.
Done deal. Yep. All
And
the
this
other
coming
stuff
from a
will
guy
come.
who doesn't just know that theoretically, he's a jerk.
So we can reach
But
a
look
whole,
what God can do with you,
reach
you
a whole
know?
new audience now. So
Jerks are us. Right here.
jerks are us.
Jerks be weak.
Jerks for Jesus.
Jerks be weak.
Okay, that plane landed a little rough. It's like landing one in a storm,
Yeah.
which I did. I landed once in Louisville or somewhere sideways.
Yeah.
Not once, twice. It went sideways once, and then it went, and all the while you were looking at the runway. That was interesting.
But you landed.
We landed.
You
and
landed,
that told me that day those pilots know what they're doing.
I like watching the wings when you're really in some significant turbulence.
Y'all
and
are
they're
giving
just
me
going up and
anxiety
down
right
like
now.
that.
Yeah, you don't like flying.
I don't like
do you?
it. Nope.
Have you ever flown?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
all the
but you
time.
do not like it, do
I
you?
do not.
I don't blame you.
True story. I wanted to be a
kinda
pilot
odd.
growing up. Like I thought I was
Were
going to
you
be an
too tall?
astronaut or a pilot.
Hey, listen, I'm just going to tell you. Human beings are silly. They get in a metal can
Yes.
that goes 30 or 40,000 feet in the air, and you can look out the window when you're up there. And I do this often flying. I look down there thinking, how stupid is this right here?
And the whole time the wings are
Oh,
flopping.
yeah, you're
And
bouncing
then
around.
they tell,
and it's-
one bird can come hit the engine and
You remember, it wasn't Value Jet. What was the long one? Yeah, no, it was Value Jet a long time ago. It went out of business. I rode one of those to Miami or somewhere one time, and I swear it sounded just like an old station wagon that my granddad used to have going down a dirt road. It had the same rattles, and it was like, what are you doing?
oh, I got on American Eagle and I thought it was a lawnmower.
Yeah. Oh, Spirit Airlines.
Oh,
That's so
yeah.
bad. Hey, it's even worse for astronauts though. A single paint chip in outer space can destroy a spaceship.
Hello,
Speaking of
Challenger.
silly humans, that you would strap yourself to a chair at the top of a rocket and say, okay, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
There's at the space and
Let's leave all the oxygen that I need to survive and go somewhere where there's not any
the
oxygen.
Space Center in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yep.
There's an exhibit in there. They have the little capsule that the first monkey, before they sent humans, they sent a monkey. And there's this capsule in there. There's all these little writings hanging around about that. And the whole time I'm standing there looking at it, I'm thinking, what in the world did that monkey think? When that rocket took off.
Not
It was
enough
hilarious.
bananas.
Okay, so I knew that we could take a serious Bible talk and turn it into something like this, and we did. Plane landed. Take a break, come back, play Inny or Outty. Hope you stay with us.
You may have seen people wearing Mike the Baptist t-shirts or hoodies lately and wondered to yourself, hey self, where could I get some of that bling bling? Well, tell yourself not to worry, because it's easy to order Mike the Baptist logo tees and hoodies for yourself or your family and friends. Visit MikeTheBaptist.com, click on the merchandise link, and shop away. Lots of colors and sizes to pick from. And now available, I'm Just a Christian Trying Not to Cuss tees and hoodies. Mike the Baptist is all about real talk with real people, spreading the good news to a world who can really use some good news right now. When you purchase Mike the Baptist tees and hoodies, you're helping Mike and the crew pay the bills to keep Mike the Baptist on the interwebs and talking about God's love for all people. It's really that simple. And we make no apologies for having fun and living out the Christian life. Order your tees or hoodies today with just the logo or familiar sayings you hear on Mike the Baptist episodes. Just visit MikeTheBaptist.com and click on merchandise. Thanks so much for watching and listening to Mike the Baptist and for your support in helping us spread the good news. What a great planet.
Hey everybody, it's time to play America's almost favoriteest new game show, Inny or Outty, where we challenge our guests to figure out if a phrase we give them is actually in the Bible or out of the Bible. Sharpen your wits, guest. You're about to be in the hot seat of Bible stuff, because you're the next contestant on Inny or Outty. Here's Mike.
Today on Inny or Outty, I had planned on taking a serious approach to the game because sometimes we get a little loose and a little flippant. And then I thought, nah, we'll just stick with the plan. So HD, Brother Hodo, and Koontz, Michael Koontz, are in the power seats. And y'all don't have to explain how Inny or Outty works.
Pretty simple, right?
There's no need to explain it. And I would not ask you or Koontz either one to explain it. Now, Jason, I might ask to just mention something about.
Well, he gets it that, somebody asks a question. If it's in there, you say it's in.
Ready?
If it's not, you say it's out. I mean,
Outty. So that's pretty simple.
Jason's brilliant.
Jason, there's no even need for you to. There's no even need for you to explain Inny or Outty. Let's just play. What do you say?
I'm ready. You ready?
Hodo, lay it on us.
We just finished the insanity about airplane travel.
We did.
And, so much of the, I'll say, false theology out there is that we think that when we come to Christ, everything's supposed to be easy, no bumps in the road.
Right.
So what about this phrase, in the Bible or not? Safe and sound. We arrived safe and sound.
Gut reaction? I have one.
Okay, I want to hear your gut reaction. But
First or second?
First.
You want to hear it now?
Yeah, go ahead.
It sounds like American Airlines wrote that to me. Okay, that's my gut reaction.
My gut reaction is, I think that's in one of the epistles that Paul wrote in reference to making it to one of his destinations
safe and sound. Oh.
I think.
Okay.
Could be wrong.
Koontz, you look deep in thought.
Yeah.
For those of you watching, for those of you not, Koontz looks deep in thought.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with your gut.
Okay. My gut's also hungry, so you might be
Mine is too. Mine's
hearing it growling.
Mine's talking a lot right now.
A little bit.
Safe and sound. But, if I was to go to something like the easy read version, which was written by artificial intelligence, I'm pretty sure, I think that would be in there.
Which AI bot was it that wrote it?
I'm going to say chat. But I'm kind of thinking out.
You're thinking out?
I'm thinking out.
Safe and sound sounds very modern, doesn't it?
It does, but
But you think you've read that?
I think that Paul said something in one of the epistles about being safe and sound, like arriving safe and sound.
Because he talked a lot to other people about traveling here and there, didn't he?
Yeah.
And sending them out on these
I could be off base, but I feel fairly
Are we talking
confident.
a very modern translation, or are we sticking King James type-ish here?
King James.
Boy, he's
I stick with the King James. That's all I quote.
King James.
That's because we don't know King James.
It could be it. Well, now I grew up hearing it.
Safe and
I didn't pay as
sound.
much
Safe
attention
and
back then as I
sound.
do now, but safe and sound. My gut, I'm sticking with my gut if I can get the two of you to kind of go along with it.
I'm good with out on that one.
You're good without?
I'm good with it being an Outty.
I'll stick with in. I'll be the outlier.
We got to get a consensus.
Are we going to do consensus?
We
gotta
have to
do
do consensus. That's
just
the rule.
All right, so if you guys are in, I'll go with you, but I feel like it's...
No, we're saying out.
yeah, if you guys are out, I'll go with you. But
He tried to change y'all, didn't he?
I almost bit for
Professor Ricciardi over there almost got us on that one. But
I'll go with you guys, but I feel like it may be something that Paul wrote in one of the epistles.
Well, see, here's where you're going to look really good.
Yeah, you
If
will.
you're right, you're going to look really good.
But I've been wrong, and you guys have drugged me along a lot recently, so I'm probably wrong.
Recently.
That's weeks ago.
It seems like it's a pretty even spread of dragging each other into the darkness once in a while on Inny or Outty. But you know what's fun is you never really regret it, because when you get the actual answer, you kind of forget pretty quick that you were a loser. Or try to.
all losers.
We're all losers.
Well, all right then.
So did we go in or out?
We went out
Outty.
as a group.
We're Outty.
We're out as a group.
Yep, American Airlines wrote that on an ad. That was my guess.
Well, both of you are wrong.
Oh, now Here we go.
There's three of us. both of you are wrong.
All of you are wrong.
Okay.
So it is in the Bible,
Yes.
but it was not Paul. It happened to be Jesus who was talking about the lost son, and he says, "Your brother has come home. Your father has killed the fatted calf because he has received him back safe and sound."
How cool is that?
It is.
safe
I don't even mind being wrong.
So those were red letters even.
Those are red letters.
And we screwed up the red letters again.
That's why I don't mind being wrong, because I want to know that what's right.
I think our Bibles are going to start looking like your shirt. I don't
Little-
think we
little
deserve
pink.
red letters. They're pink now. We're messing it up too much.
But now look,
We may have spent too much time reading the Jefferson Bible, where he just cut out the things he didn't like.
I've never heard of the Jefferson Bible.
Yeah, he
George Jefferson? Moving on up.
the President Jefferson.
Oh,
Wheezy in that Bible.
He was more of a deist than he was a believer.
Yeah.
and
Is
he
anybody
cut
else
out.
hypoglycemic?
Oh,
Yeah, he cut out the things he didn't like in the Bible. So
I did not. I've never heard of that. Interesting. Probably a pretty short book.
I bet the George Jefferson one's better.
I'd like to see a George Jefferson edition. It'd just be really funny.
All right.
Okay, so did we lose?
yeah, we lost it.
Okay.
It was in.
And the correct answer is that's in the Bible.
We
It's
failed
in the Bible.
miserably because we
Safe
don't know
and
God's word.
sound. Let me mark that off my list.
Inny or Outty is interesting because some of them sound like they shouldn't be in there that are, and some aren't that sound like they should. Did I get that right?
Sure.
Be in there. It's interesting. Koontz,
All righty.
challenge us, would you?
So, Inny or Outty, count your blessings.
Name them one by one.
a
And
great
it will
song, isn't
surprise
it?
you
That was a
what the
hymn.
Lord has done.
Yes, that was a hymn.
Count your blessings, name them.
think yes,
we did
I think it's
this
in. Did we?
Nope.
We didn't.
Well, I don't think we did.
I think in. That sounds like a psalm.
I don't think it's in there. My gut says. My gut is really growling. Though. I'm really hungry.
Now, HD, we're back to you.
Have you
to-
got gut rot? I was gonna
Got
say,
some.
Rut gut.
Need some of that
I
gut,
think it's in there.
gut juice that they
I think it's in
advertise.
It's
there.
in the psalm.
Count your blessings.
I don't think it is, but I'll go with you guys if you want me to.
I just think it is. I mean, it sounds too spiritual.
It does. And there's the
Now listen, count it a blessing. I think is in there somewhere.
Count your blessings.
yeah. Jesus did he say something to that effect in the Beatitudes as well?
Blessed are the.
Well, now you're counting blessings that he said because he said blessed are. All.
I don't know. I feel like it's in the Psalms. It just sounds like something that would be in the Psalms.
Look, I respect both of you guys as friends and preachers, but my gut is saying
It's not in there.
that's not in there. But
Your gut was wrong on the last one.
it was, and I also have to go along. I also have to get to a consensus, or we're not going to get to eat. Because if I hold it up too long,
So it's not a hung jury, is what you're saying. You're coming to the
Dark side.
Dark side, yeah.
yes, with my usual caveat that
You're gonna hedge your bets.
Yes.
I'm going to hedge my bets. Yeah, I guess Koontz sounds like we are Inny.
An Inny. So, well, you guys really kind of stressed me out on that, so I had to go back and double check myself.
That means it's out.
It's an Outty.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How? I mean, we kind of need an explanation now. You can't just leave us hanging there.
It's not in there.
Oh, so there's a Bible.
Was there anything that sounded
We need
anything
some
like
references.
It's not in
What
there.
did the Google say?
That is what Outty means, turns out.
Yeah. No, it's just not in there.
Count
It's-
it a blessing.
I mean, it was
the
a
closest I can think of.
it's a song. It's one of our hymns.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Brother HD sang for us a while ago.
Count your
But it
blessings.
sounded so good, I just
It
knew it
does
had to
sound
be
good.
in there.
Well, what the part that made me for a minute think it was familiar is I realized it was that you sung that line of that song. But that's what helped me try to stand my ground the best I could. I think that's a song or something.
It is a song.
Well, in Psalm 103 verses 1 and 2, the idea is there. It says,
Which is where the hymn comes from.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. So,
Well, yeah.
Count your
so
blessings.
by the time that got to Arkansas, somebody said, count your blessings. They kind of trimmed it down a little bit. Okay, well, that's good.
So we had double losers today.
We had double losers, yep.
Yeah.
But you know what? In the first one, we lost, but Jason was actually right, and we pulled him in. On this one, we lost. I was right, but you pulled me in.
Yeah.
I see a pattern.
Goes back to what he's talking.
So just listen to the lone dissenter.
If you hang around bad people, you're gonna lose at the game.
Therefore, this table must disband.
I don't think any of you are bad people. I don't think you're as smart as I think you are at times, but I don't think you're bad people. But now I'm included. I'm sitting at the table too, so.
I'm a bad
At our best, we are average.
I think I was talking to somebody recently and said, the preachers there humble themselves a lot of times. We don't have to humble them, so, which is a good thing.
It is better to humble yourself than to be humbled.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. If you wait around for somebody to humble you.
I was actually just thinking the same thing.
Hey, thanks for being with us. We're going to take a break, come back, sing you a hymn, and we're going to wrap it up.
Oh, wow. What a great contestant and a fine sport today on Inny or Outty, America's almost favorite new game show. Study up, future guest people. You're next in the hot seat for Inny or Outty.
A lot of people that I know, including myself, grew up in churches.
People I know.
What did I say? People I know, including myself.
You know yourself.
It's late. I'm hungry. Storming outside. All sorts of things are happening today. But I was going to say that a lot of people are familiar with Southern gospel music in churches. Today's hymn is in that vein. It has that same feel as Southern gospel. And you'll recognize it once we do it. It's page 155 in your Mike the Baptist hymnal. Open that sucker up. That's something else you don't hear all the time in church when it's time to sing a hymn. Open that sucker up. Turn page 155. We'll sing you this hymn, and then we'll get out of here. Much to everyone's pleasure today. And thank you, fellas, for being here and talking nonsense. I think somewhere in the Bible it says something about the nonsense will be used for good. Is that right? Something like that?
That sounds like our next Inny or Outty.
Well, it's a hillbilly paraphrase of, but the foolish stuff.
Oh, foolishness of the
preaching.
Cross.
Yeah, so there you go.
Life to those who are.
Right. Loosely, it's somewhere says something about that. So I'm trying to tie that into a lot of the foolishness here. But this may just be foolishness.
This old hymn brings
Either
it
way,
back.
this old hymn will bring you right back. It'll bring you back to your roots and anchor you once again in the faith. It's number 155. If you have it open, sing with us. Stand and sing with us, as they say at the end of church services. Just take those old records off the shelf. I'll sit and listen to them by myself. Today's music ain't got the same soul. I like that old time rock and roll. Don't try to take me to a disco. You'll never even get me out on the floor. In 10 minutes I'll be late for the door. I like that old time rock and roll. Still like that old time rock and roll. That kind of music just soothes the soul. I reminisce about the days of old with that old time rock and roll. Still like that old time rock and roll. That kind of music just soothes the soul. I reminisce about the days of old with that old time rock and roll. Thank you so much for joining us, HD Jones, Jason Ricciardi, Michael Koontz, and me. I'm Mike the Baptist. See you next time. We're all just Christians, and so are you.
Try not to.
Yes.
All right. That'll be about enough of that.
Mike the Baptist.